It's the weekend. Welcome again to Massey United Insurance's Line and Length. I'm Barry Wilkinson. It's the cricket show, of course, where we look at the sport not only in the region but internationally as well. With me is Andrew Seeley, and it's great to be back. We have so many things to discuss. Of course, one of the biggest topics and talking points is not only the ICC Cricket World Cup, which the finals are tonight, but of course it's about Otis Gibson coming to the West Indies again, but as the bowling coach for England. That is indeed going to be a big talking point on tonight's program. We're also going to look at the finals scheduled for tonight, 11 o'clock Eastern Caribbean time, and then some housekeeping matters about the West Indies squad preparing for the England series. It's all to come right here on Massey United Insurance's Line and Length.
Across the Caribbean, more people are placing their trust in Massey United Insurance for the protection of the things that are important to them, their homes, businesses, and their prized possessions. That's because Massey United Insurance offers excellent general insurance coverage to help you manage whatever life sends your way. Our cadre of well-reputed agencies and trained insurance professionals are always ready to provide you with sound advice and prompt service. Choose the security and sound strength that is Massey United Insurance.
So welcome back to Massey United Insurance's Line and Length. Good to be back. It's been a long time out, and Andrew Seeley doing a tremendous job holding the fort. Andrew, come back to Barbados. Got the news. Otis Gibson back in the West Indies, but not for the West Indies, coach of the England team. First of all, how did that news strike you? And it's obviously a very strategic one from England.
Well, no surprise, Barry. We had heard initially when Gibson left back in August, by mutual agreement, there no suggestion, when Gibson had left last August, that he was going to be back with the England team. David Sacker had the role up until a few weeks ago. He's indicated he's going to the Big Bash, going back home, according to him. We're not sure if he's going before he was pushed or if he jumped, but nevertheless, Gibson back, strategic move, the Caribbean. Gibson knows the players who will be playing against the England team, and obviously, as the incoming ECB chairman suggested, England needs to beat the West Indies and beat the West Indies fairly badly.
No, you know, you look at the Otis Gibson coaching job for the West Indies. He did what I thought was a very good job. He was on the right track, got the T20 World Cup in the bag, and he was also getting the players into a system and a developmental progress. There were some hiccups, of course, the comments he would have made in 2011 about senior players post-World Cup, and the senior players not pulling their weight. That would have affected his relationship with the team. Now, what can Otis get out of this job in such a short space of time, based on the fact that he's been given just this series initially? What do you think the ECB are trying to gauge and watch from Otis Gibson?
I think obviously is in their mind, Gibson had a good run with the England team. In fact, he's credited with the performances now of James Anderson and Stuart Broad. So obviously they're looking to see what he can do with some of the up-and-coming bowlers. Christopher Jordan, for instance, there's a new bowler, Matt Wood, I believe his name is. So there's some new promising fast bowlers. England obviously recognizes there is a transition process, because if they look towards the next World Cup, or obviously Anderson and Broad will probably not be around. So this is an opportunity for Gibson to show his mettle. The incoming chairman, Mr. Graves, obviously no long-term contracts can be signed before he comes into office in May. So Gibson has a golden opportunity, and it's kind of interesting. Gibson takes over as bowling coach for England, and Phil Simmons takes over as the West Indies coach, leaving Ireland. So it's in and out of the UK.
Indeed, we're going to discuss the Phil Simmons job in a moment too. Now, you look at West Indies and you look at that squad that Phil Simmons is going to have to work with. The announcement would have been made that Chris Gayle said that he's not playing, of course, for the West Indies. He is prepared, of course, to play IPL cricket, which is indeed his choice based on the fact that he's not a contracted player for the West Indies. Let's look at that West Indies squad, and when you look at that squad, does it hit you that we could actually beat England based on the names that you've seen there and the lack of experience in the squad?
Well, even though there's a lack of experience, the names are rather familiar. We have two new batsmen out of Barbados, Shea Hope and Shane Dowrich, wicketkeeper batsmen, who have performed well in the PCL tournament. And clearly, certainly, if you perform in what is considered the precursor to playing for the test level, you ought to be selected. So I'm happy about those two, as I am about a recall for Puramal and Bishu. But the reality is, I don't know if they're ready for Test cricket. And if we look at the squad, we go back to middle order: Darren Bravo, Marlon Samuels, Shivnarine Chandlerpaul, Jermaine Black with Leon Johnson. I don't think those names would inspire any fear at all into Anderson and Broad. I'm going to be very honest.
No, we talk about Gibson, we talk about Phil Simmons. They're going to be on two different sides of the spectrum. Simmons has done a fantastic job with Cricket Ireland. There's no doubt about that. I mean, he has brought them from a nothing to something, to even getting very close in the Cricket World Cup. When you look at the job that he has, do you think that is going to be one where you're going to expect immediate results? And if you don't get those results, will the fans and the public be instantly upset with his immediate progress?
Well, it's been 20 years now, Barry. We've been waiting for results. And every now and then we hear about the comment about turning the corner and light, but we're not seeing any corners and we're not seeing any lights. In fact, we're in the darkness as far as I'm concerned. And I think we have to accept that reality. I don't know if the fans are willing to accept that reality, but we have to accept that reality. I think as practicing journalists and those who follow the game, the reality is we are not good, and we have to accept that reality. If we accept that reality, then we can move from there. I think Simmons' job is a massive undertaking. He indicates 8 years in Ireland, probably time to come out of the cold, try a different challenge, and I think it is perhaps the greatest challenge he's ever faced.
Wow, that's very, very telling. It's also, or it should also be noted that when Simmons comes to the job, he's going to come looking to see how he can rebuild the team for Test and ODI cricket with immediacy, because there's a lot of Test cricket coming up. There's West Indies England, West Indies Australia, West Indies Sri Lanka, and then West Indies Australia again. Right. So he has a lot of time to develop the Test cricket game. But then they're straight into the T20 World Cup in March. How do you think that he's going to space his time out with those immediate things coming up?
Well, I think one of the things that have to be determined pretty early is what sort of combination he will have working with him. We've had Stuart Williams, we've had Andre Coley, we've had Kurt D'Ambrose. They've been around the team of late. Will Simmons want them still around? I mean, he knows all of them very well. He's played with both Stuart Williams and Kurt D'Ambrose. Yeah. Will he want them around, or does he have someone in mind or some ones in mind to bring along with him? Because clearly, while he will be the overall supremo, as we understand it, there will be need for some serious assistance. And I think a determination has to be made where that assistance comes from.
All right, wonderful stuff. Well, we look forward to see how Otis Gibson does coming back to the Caribbean for England, and of course how Phil Simmons in his first stint will do for the West Indies. So when we come back on Mass United Insurance's Line and Length, tonight is the big finale. It's going to be Australia and New Zealand. The home teams are playing in the final for the Cricket World Cup. We're going to have a bit of a preview. Don't move a muscle. You're watching Mass United Insurance's Line and Length.
Across the Caribbean, more people are placing their trust in Massey United Insurance for the protection of the things that are important to them, their homes, businesses, and their prized possessions. That's because Massey United Insurance offers excellent general insurance coverage to help you manage whatever life sends your way. Our cadre of well-reputed agencies and trained insurance professionals are always ready to provide you with sound advice and prompt service. Choose the security and sound strength that is Massey United Insurance.
So we're back on Mass United Insurance's Line and Length, and boy, the World Cup has been going tremendous. The final set for tonight, 11 o'clock Eastern Caribbean time, between Australia and New Zealand, the two hosts. Andrew, I said from the beginning, if there was a team to beat at this World Cup, I personally thought it was New Zealand. They're the only team now in the competition who have played unbeaten, because India were beaten in the semi-final and they're gone home. But let's look at the two semi-finals first of all. New Zealand played a cracker of a match, which continued to make me think that they have the best team, overall team at this Cricket World Cup. And I say that when you look at their players, there's no one in the top 12 who were in the most runs or even the most wickets. I think Stark is in the most wickets now. But team performances, continue to see when a player is down, someone else picks up. Williamson has been off the ball for the last couple of matches. Gupta has picked up. Gupta goes off the ball, Grant Elliott picks up. You have Elliott off the ball, Corey Anderson picks up. McCullum remains consistent. Then you have the bowling, Stark, Vittori. They are not Stark, Bolt, I beg your pardon. Bolt and Southey. They continue to be the good players that New Zealand need to win this World Cup. I think they're the team to beat come tonight.
But I think we'd certainly say it's about time. New Zealand has had many opportunities to win a World Cup. I don't know if they'll have a better one. Brendan McCullum said to Daniel Vittori, give me one last swing. This is the last going down for you. One more time. And I think this is the time. To beat Australia in Australia would be the icing on the cake. Having won 8 matches at home in New Zealand. To beat Australia in Australia tonight would be the icing on the cake. But I think they can do it.
Well, let me say the only thing that's against them is that they've had the pampering advantage of playing all their games in New Zealand.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And they're now going to be going to Australia.
Across the Tasman.
It's going to be much more difficult to beat Australia in Australia at the MCG. And Australia, talk what you like about them. They know how to win World Cups. And Australia know how to win matches at particular times. And they're now beginning to peak.
Well, we saw them just recently in the semi-final against the defending champions India. And what a performance from the Australian team. Once again, as you mentioned, when somebody's down, much like New Zealand, somebody else rises to the occasion.
Yeah.
Well, Steve Smith has been at the top consistently, but Aaron Finch, almost anonymous in the World Cup, prior to the semi-final, he did it. And then Mitchell Johnson at the end, a 9-ball 26 that took them over the 300 mark to almost guarantee a victory over India.
All right, we've got carried away a little bit. Let's rewind somewhat. South Africa continue to be beaten at critical stages in world tournaments. What's wrong with South Africa that they just don't know how to get over the pedal?
1 run off 4 balls, asked Alan Donald.
Wow.
Dropping the World Cup, according to Steve Waugh. Now ask Behardine and JP Duminy. The ball straight up in the air. Behardine has it. Somehow Duminy doesn't see anything and knocks him over. Game over. I can't answer. A.B. de Villiers, when you saw, and you did, when you saw Morne Morkel's face, I think that's the classic picture from World Cup 2015. Because he knows this was his last chance to win a major trophy. Yes. And it just went a begging.
It went a begging. And Dale Steyn, who bowled that last ball that went for 6, Elliott, tremendous cricket. I think Dale Steyn too said to himself, why did I bowl that length and even that line? It was just all wrong.
But based on what Grant Elliott had done earlier, you almost had the feeling as you sat and watched that New Zealand was going to win. Because Elliott, there was no... it seems as if that all he needed was 1 run, as opposed to 6 off 2. He hit it for 6. It was so nonchalant, ran down, hugged Vittori. You know what I mean? As if this is not the victory they're looking for. The victory they're looking for is on Sunday in Australia.
I thought Ian Smith almost had a heart attack.
But I heard it, but he's been around when they almost had an opportunity, because New Zealand have been called the best semi-finalists in the world. And Ian Smith was part of those semi-finals alongside some better players like the Crowe brothers and Coney, etc. But now he's probably reliving the opportunity.
Indeed. Great stuff. Congratulations. I like New Zealand. I think they're the team to beat.
I think Massey United Insurance Line of Life loves New Zealand.
Yes, definitely. The team for me to beat. Now, fast forward. Australia versus India. Being played at the SCG, a ground where Australia have only lost 2 out of 12 ODIs in the last 5 years at the SCG. They have a tremendous record at the SCG. So for India to come there and beat them would have been difficult. Also, too, India did not do well against them in the Tri-Series, which was just a couple of months ago. So India had some X's against them. The most positive was that they were playing unbeaten at the World Cup. But like the headline I read the next day, India ran out of gas. And that is just what happened. You look at when Australia batted, Steve Smith is just pure class. No doubt about that. That boy has reached the threshold of going into the top echelon of great Australian batsmen. He has a long way to go, but he's begun to join that list, I would say. And then Glenn Maxwell, I think, is a really gifted cricketer. And Aaron Finch, like you said, has only scored 100 in the first game, but then he went off the boil.
That's right.
So he came good at a good time.
But I think India probably had the best run of the World Cup.
Yeah.
But in the key game, They did not deliver because having not won the toss, Australia batting, and Australia scoring 328 for 7, it was always going to be extremely difficult. And even when Dhawan and Sharma were going so well, and Australia never panicked. And I think that's the key factor. Australia never panicked. And then the wickets started to fall. And somehow, as I watched Dhoni, it didn't suggest to me as if Dhoni thought that even while he was batting with Jadeja, that India could actually win. He didn't give that impression.
What was funny to see the post-match comments from Dhoni saying that he's still interested in playing in 2019. But
Yeah.
I think that's just talk.
Well, that's 4 years from now.
That's
That's a long time for Dhoni.
Now, when India batted, that you correctly said, the Australian bowlers' tails were up, especially for the two key wickets of Virat Kohli and Suresh Raina. Because those were the two key wickets that would have pegged back the Indians' grip.
That's right.
And I thought it was good night nurse from there.
Yeah, it was just a question then because the run rate was just creeping.
Yeah.
And there was the return of Mitchell Starc to come. And with Mitchell Starc to return, it was always fairly obvious that what was going to happen next. And I think it was just too many runs and India did not deliver at the particular point in time. And as we see it, we look forward to tonight's action.
Yes, so tonight, of course, the big final. India are out, and it's Australia versus New Zealand. I think it's going to be a very, very good final. The thing is, if anybody's going to stay up to watch, I'll be up to watch it for sure, because the World Cup has been good. Too long. Your thoughts on the World Cup, the length it has been? People have criticized the ICC, saying that it's too long a World Cup, but then they've criticized them for playing the associates. And the ICC are saying, you can't have it both ways. If you're going to play the associates at the World Cup, it's going to be this time because it's 14 teams. If we cut the associates, you have a shorter World Cup and perhaps a more competitive. How do you see it?
Yeah, but I think the question is, in terms of scheduling, why is it that we can't have two games being played at the same time? It is TV coverage such that if one is not shown at this particular time, then that something would be lost? Because in my view, we could play 2 matches per day, and that would certainly shorten it. I am of the certain view that the associate should play. The performances of Ireland, even UAE, Scotland, Afghanistan, deserving of more international competition.
From a
and if it's called a World Cup,
yeah,
like the World Cup in football, or if it's called the Olympics,
yeah,
because there can be upsets.
Yeah.
When Hazy Crawford won the 100 meters,
Ireland beat the West Indies. Is that an upset?
No, that wasn't an upset.
Come on,
when Hazy Crawford won the gold medal at the Olympics, nobody had Hazy Crawford to win, and he was there because Trinidad were at the Olympics.
It's true, but I want the associates to play, but 2 games a day from a logistics perspective, I think will be very, very tough.
Well, it can happen because
It can
when we have
happen.
the Olympics,
I think it can happen if the World Cup was played in England.
Yes, they certainly can.
Which is a more condensed,
homogeneous,
a more condensed thing. But playing in New Zealand and Australia, 2 matches a day will be tough.
And you were there, so I guess you understood
but
the logistics.
You can get 2 matches a day in England easily because England is not that big per se.
Right.
You can play one game at Edgbaston at the Oval, and then you can play
Lords and Leeds.
Yeah. Lords and Leeds. So perhaps that's what they might think about doing for the next Cricket World Cup, to keep it a bit more condensed.
But before we go, Barry, I don't think we can leave without talking about everybody's favorite cricketer, at least everybody in England at the moment, Kevin Pietersen.
Indeed.
What's going to happen? You think he'll be in the Ashes?
I think Kevin Pietersen is all scripted for Kevin Pietersen to come back and play in the Ashes. And England have realised that the belly of their batting is very inexperienced and weak, and they don't stand a chance of even doing well or being competitive in the Ashes if there's no Kevin Pietersen. And the new chairman has recognised this.
Colin Graves, he's a very serious man.
He wants the best players and forget the attitudes and whatever. Pietersen at 34 still has a lot to offer. I know Nasser Hussain said, look, 34, I don't think so, 24 maybe. But I think at the not only the age of Pietersen, but the quality player that he still is, I still think he's good enough to come and offer something to the England team.
Okay, Barry, picture this. Alistair Cook and Kevin Pietersen at the crease against Australia in the summer. How will it work? Because Cook is on record as not wanting Pietersen. How will it work?
A lot of it depends on those things. One, you have to thrash out the differences. Get those differences out of the way. And if you get those differences out of the way, I think that the England team will be a much more competitive side.
Well, it certainly would be with Pietersen. And if we get Trott back as it appears,
I forgot Trott to come back.
And Pietersen, we certainly will look
then
to have him.
Then you got to have Joe Root.
So it looks like a proper middle
Yeah, it
order
looks
now.
like a much better middle order.
Certainly better than ours, for sure.
Yeah, well, they're coming here. There will be no Peterson, but it's going to be a very tough series for the West Indies. So Peterson to come back, I think, is a good thing. He loses out at IPL, and I don't think he'll be playing CPL, of course, which will be a bit of a loss for the St. Lucia Zooks because they wanted to have him for the full series. But he's obviously bent on playing back for England because he understands that you lose your intrinsic value when you're not playing for your country. And to play all of this T20 cricket at the end of the day is just about money. I'm not sure it's about trying to be competitive because T20 does not have the same,
So does it really
history
mean that Test
of
cricket
Test
is
cricket.
it? And Test cricket is really
Well,
it?
in England, in South Africa,
Australia.
in Australia, that's what I mean. Test cricket is where it's at, and unfortunately, because West Indies are not doing well in Test cricket, it's devalued here somewhat. But Test cricket is still the treasured thing. You ask all the players about records and they speak about Test cricket. Even the current day players. Darren Bravo interviewed him. He is keen on doing well in Test cricket.
Well, he needs to, because buying at number 3, critical position, because we probably will see the return of Devon Smith I think it's probably a dozen times he's returned now. So we'll see Devon Smith, which means Darren Bravo potentially could be batting pretty early. So we see Test cricket as the pinnacle, and England are coming. Even without Peterson.
All right, good stuff. Thanks so much, Andrew. When we come back on Mass United Insurance's Line and Length, I had a chance while I was in New Zealand to catch up with a blast from the past. Bruce Parado, a former West Indies player who would have played with the greats. I'm talking about people like Sir Frank Worrell, the great Seymour Nurse, and also Everton Weeks, and Sir Wesley Hall. He played with those guys and he shared some experiences. We're going to talk to him when we come back on Mass United Insurance's Line and Length.
Across the Caribbean, more people are placing their trust in Massey United Insurance for the protection of the things that are important to them, their homes, businesses, and their prized possessions. That's because Massey United Insurance offers excellent general insurance coverage to help you manage whatever life sends your way. Our cadre of well-reputed agencies and trained insurance professionals are always ready to provide you with sound advice and prompt service. Choose the security and sound strength that is Massey United Insurance.
Welcome back to the program. So while I was in New Zealand, I had a chance to catch up with Bruce Parado. He just walked in the nets in Napier in New Zealand, and he spoke a lot to me about his days in the past and also what he has been thinking about the ICC Cricket World Cup. Well, it's a pleasure to be with Bruce Parado, a legend of the game, played in the 50s with people like Sir Everton Weeks, Sir Wes Hall. Bruce, it's great to have you. Sir Garfield Sobers. Let's talk a little bit about your days playing for the West Indies. You only played 13 tests, but you were an effective batsman and someone who played with a lot of legends.
Oh, well, it was wonderful to bat with all of them. The 3 W's, Frank Worrell came in at 3, Everton Weeks at 4, Clyde Walcott at 5. You either had to open or bat 6. So I opened in a few tests. I batted at 6 in my first test, and then they put me to open in the second and batted. But I changed between 1 and 6.
Now, I've come here today at Nelson Park, lovely weather by the way, and you just turned up.
Yeah.
Do you live here in New Zealand?
I live in New Zealand, in Hamilton. Yeah.
So you just came to give the guys a shout, see what's happening?
I thought I'd come and meet the fellas and find out who knew my old mates. Old Weeksy's still alive, of course, and Gary Sobers and Sonny Ramadan and Rohan Kanai and a lot of great blokes.
I saw you talking to Chris Gale. Were you giving him some words of advice?
Oh, not really. No, what we were talking about that looked like advice was I was just commenting that I noticed that some of the I don't know what nation they were, played on drives by twiddling their bat around, and how I thought it was a dangerous shot. You twiddle your bat around too much, and the next thing it hits the edge and goes back. I mean, our fellas, Weeks, Worrell, Walker, they played all those shots, but they just played them as on drives. If mid-on was there, they made sure they beat mid-on or mid-wicket, which was easy to beat. You control that without twiddling your bat. Surely if you twiddle your bat, it's only got twiddle a bit too early, and the ball's gone back to the bowler.
Now, when you watch cricket these days, how much has it really changed from when you played in the 50s for the West Indies?
There's the one-day stuff. You're seeing a lot of one-day stuff, which is really hit and giggle, really, when you think of it, and look at it and see it.
Not authentic like when you would have played and when Sir Everton was in his heyday.
Oh no, I mean you 5-day test, you didn't bat like that. You went in a 5-day test, you batted properly. I mean you hit the odd six or a couple of sixes, but the feel for the opening bowlers was very similar to here. But I mean you didn't have to whack it. You could afford to hit over. You only had this man to beat in here, Silly Madan, and short extra cover. So ball up to you could afford to hit it in the air.
Do you think too much one-day cricket is being played?
Oh, well, I think so. There's test matches as well in between, but I don't know what's difficult to say what turnout they get to those.
Now, last question. What is your fondest memory of playing for the West Indies? Fondest memory, even if it's a joke?
Well, the fondest memory of which joke I've written Everton about it was going into bat after all three of them had made hundreds. And I was going into bat, and halfway going out there, I remember thinking, Jesus, someone's going to make a bloody duck. I hope to God it's not me. And I went in. Clyde Walcott was still batting with me. Actually, he had about 85, 90. He had his 100 coming up. And I played every shot in the book. I batted for 45 minutes and got a duck. And when I came inside, Everton Weekes was waiting for me. Mambo, allow me to congratulate you, he said. He put his hand out. That's the finest duck I've ever seen in my life. You played every shot in the book and you didn't make one run, not even one run.
that will happen these days.
Typical of Everton.
Yeah, typical of Everton, a man who is of great humour. Great to catch up then with Bruce Pardo, a legend of the game, and so good to have him here come and shout the West Indies team members in the nets in Nelson Park. So that's it for our programme. Continue to keep in touch. Of course, you can join us at Line Length or go online to www.lineandlength.net. I'm Barry Wilkinson. That's it for another show of Mass United Insurance's Line and Length. Goodbye for now.